Boys, what's good? It's Herm. We're here with my final 2025 NBA mock draft. We are less than 24 hours away from the 2025 NBA draft, and we've seen a ton of trade stuff leading up to it here. The Celtics have moved off of Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis in the last 24 hours. Jordan Poole got traded. We've seen, the Desmond Bane trade already, the Kevin Durant trade. Ton of trades going on, super exciting stuff that have some picks moving around. And I think as we get closer to the draft, we're going to see even more. The Brooklyn Nets have 5 first-round picks right now. I think more likely than not, they're not going to keep all of those. The Thunder and the Celtics reportedly both trying to get up into the lottery. The Nets want to move up, maybe even to the top 5. So we'll see what goes on there. But we're going to get into it and talk about the whole first round. Every pick that I have projected here, kind of based off of what we're hearing as well as what I think teams should do. We're not going to have any trades today, but still, I think it's going to be dope. So before we get into it, think about subscribing. It's free, it's easy. If you don't like the content, you can always unsubscribe later, that's fine. But let's go ahead and get into it. With the first overall pick, the Dallas Mavericks select Cooper Flagg, forward out of Duke. You know what he is. He does almost everything on the basketball floor. He's going to be a really good defensive wing right away. Good shot blocking ability as a wing, whether it's chase downs or just face up. Is going to hit shots for you as well. I think he's probably averaging 17, 18 as a rookie. And big news out of Dallas today is Kyrie Irving is opting out and re-signing a new 3-year deal with Dallas. We'll see what point maybe he comes back next season. But the Mavs should be pretty solid next year, and Cooper Flagg is going to be a big part of that. We've known he was going to be this first pick for, a year at least now. And on top of that, when the Mavs got this pick, it made it even more clear. Cooper Flagg is going to Dallas, and that one is a lock. I think number 2 here is also a lock. Dylan Harper to the San Antonio Spurs. I know teams are still making offers on this. Like, there are definitely teams out there that are interested in trying to get up to Dylan Harper, but I just don't think the Spurs are going to take it. I think they think the talent is too high as a slow, methodical, break-you-down guard in the Cade Cunningham, Luka Doncic school of guards. At 6'5", going to be a real solid point guard. Might play a little off-ball with De'Aaron Fox. We'll see how that matchup ends up working. If they try to play the trio of Fox, Harper, and Stephon Castle together, that's something that will be interesting for the San Antonio Spurs. But with a guy with pretty clear all-star upside, I think the pick here is relatively obvious. At number 3 is where the draft starts to get pretty interesting because there are a lot of things going on. The Sixers are a team that's trying to be good next season, and in an Eastern Conference that's going to be a little bit weaker, the Sixers likely feel like they can contend in that conference. So they're definitely taking calls on this pick to potentially trade out of it. But if they stay, I think it's between a couple of guys. So Ace Bailey is reportedly out of the running here at number 3. Declined to work out with Philadelphia without a promise they'd take him at 3. They were not willing to do that because why would they? I mean, that just feels a little ridiculous. And because of that, he didn't work out there. He hasn't worked out for any teams that we know of. So we'll see that maybe cause a little bit of slippage from Ace Bailey. But I think that really leaves this pick down to 2 guys, VJ Edgecombe or Kon Knueppel. And I think Kon Knueppel is just such a good connective piece and a player that impacts winning in a really positive way. I think the advanced numbers are going to be even better than just kind of the traditional box score stuff because he's just going to be a solid positive player. Think Derek White in Boston, whose numbers aren't phenomenal, but the advanced numbers love him. I think Knueppel is going to be pretty similar and fits pretty well into what they do because you have Joel Embiid. They're going to try it with Paul George again, it seems like. And you have guards with Maxey and McCain. So realistically, you probably want a small forward. VJ is a little undersized to be a small forward. I think he's more of a shooting guard. Is, I believe, just about the same height as Kon, but Kon is pretty used to playing the 3. And I think is not going to have any problem being a complementary piece to what Philadelphia already has. Is a 40% shooter from deep as well, so just fits in really smoothly. And I don't know if they're willing to take him this high, but I really like the idea of how he fits into Philadelphia's offense and not a scrub on defense either. And at number 4, that means the Hornets get VJ Edgecombe, guard/forward, is a little smaller than Kon actually at 6'4", but super athletic, really good defensive player. 2.3 steals per 36 is going to pop out at you a little bit. And I think Edgecombe is the guy that the Hornets want. There's a lot of rumors that maybe the Sixers are kind of just saying they want Edgecombe so that the Hornets feel pressured to trade up. But in this mock, they're getting him here at number 4, and I think they're thrilled to do so because they already have their top scorers, right? LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, maybe even Miles Bridges. But they need a guy to kind of slide in between them. And Edgecombe fits really well there. The defensive upside is really what makes him stand out here for Charlotte as well, because LaMelo, just not a good defender. Miles Bridges, I would say, is maybe an average defender. Brandon Miller has the athleticism and the tools to be a good defender. We'll see what he ends up being. He missed a lot of time last season. But Edgecombe, I think, just slots into exactly what they need. And I love pairing athletic guys with LaMelo Ball because he's going to throw you lobs, and it's going to make you look even better. I have him comped to Victor Oladipo, whose biggest trait, even on those all-star teams with Indiana, was the defense first, and the offense kind of continued to blossom. I think Edgecombe could be a similar player, and I have him going here at number 4. At number 5, I have the Jazz going Trey Johnson. I think this is something where Ace Bailey could be considered with a super high, high school pedigree. Bailey is kind of a guy that makes sense for like a Danny Ainge-led team, but Trey Johnson to me is just more of a home run. If you're Utah, was also a really high prospect out of high school and is a bucket getter without, some of the off-the-court stuff that we've seen throughout this pre-draft process with Ace. Also, I feel a little less worried about the shot selection with Trey Johnson. Shot almost 40% from 3, despite being very much so the lead offensive engine for Texas. The defenses, he was number 1 on their scouting report, and he poured it in every time. 21 points per 36. Doesn't do a ton outside of scoring right now, but the Jazz need buckets. I mean, Markkanen might be gone this offseason. Collins, Clarkson, Sexton, all reportedly available as well. So there's just not a ton in Utah right now, and I think Trey Johnson offensively is pretty special. So I think with what they have and the outlines of the team that they're trying to build, I think Trey Johnson makes a lot of sense, and it is a shot at a star here at number 5. Is comped to Cam Thomas a lot. I got the Cam jersey on right now. I mean, I'm a huge Cam guy, and Trey Johnson, the tough shot making, is pretty similar, but I don't have quite the same efficiency concerns that I might have with Ace Bailey. Kind of reminiscent of an early 2000s guy in Allen Houston, who gave a lot of buckets for the Knicks. Didn't do a ton outside of that. He was a scorer more than anything else, which is the same with Trey. But you watch Trey hoop, and you're just like, wow. I mean, he's a special player to watch, is going to be all over League Pass this year, and I think Utah gives him a really good chance to be his best self, and I like the coaching staff there. I like the developing team. I think if you're Utah, this is a home run. At number 6, I have the Wizards going forward Ace Bailey out of Rutgers. Did slip a little bit, was initially thought of as a top 3 guy. He was going to go with the 3rd pick after the top 2 of Coop and Dylan Harper. But slips a little bit with refusing to work out for teams. And when the team still had Jordan Poole on it earlier today, I might have thought about slipping him even further. But now getting rid of Jordan Poole, it's a little more acceptable to add a young scorer, a guy with a lot of confidence, kind of fills what Jordan Poole left in the void there, and makes a lot less money than Jordan Poole was making, which is the big reason that they offloaded him to New Orleans, was to save the cap there. And Ace Bailey, I think, makes a lot of sense for a team that doesn't have a ton of offensive engines right now. I mean, Bub Carrington is cool. Bilal Coulibaly is all right. Alex Sarr is a solid defensive player, but none of those guys are going to be your number 1 on offense, and I think Ace does have that level of upside. So for a team like Washington, I think it's a good fit. I know New Orleans and Brooklyn, who are picking with the next 2 picks, are also very interested in Ace Bailey. We'll see if they'll be able to trade up, because as it stands right now, I just don't think he'd slip past Washington at 6. At number 7, I have the New Orleans Pelicans taking Kaman Maluach out of Duke. 18-year-old, pretty new to playing basketball, but blocks a lot of shots, gets a lot of rebounds, and is a solid scorer around the rim, whether it's catching lobs or off of pick and rolls. Doesn't have a super developed offensive game, But with the team adding another guard today in Jordan Poole, I think getting a big makes sense because that's kind of the biggest weakness on the roster right now. Because at full strength, you have DeJounte Murray when he recovers from the Achilles injury, as well as Jordan Poole, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson. You have all these guys who are really good offensively already, so why not add a defensive anchor on top of that as your 5? I think Yves Missi was pretty good as a rookie center, but I don't think he has the upside that Maluach has. So if you're the Pelicans here, I think this is a bet on filling out the last piece of your starting 5. Maybe they even move out Trey Murphy. I've heard some rumors of that. If I were them, I wouldn't do it. I really like Trey Murphy. I think he's a super valuable player and is one of the more underrated guys in the league. So I would keep him personally. I think that's the best move. But if they don't, maybe then you're like, oh, they need a little more scoring. Maybe they go for a wing here. But as the roster stands right now, I think starting center is the biggest weakness, and I think Maluach fills that out. At number 8, I have the Brooklyn Nets going with Jeremiah Fears, point guard out of Oklahoma. This is a team that's kind of filled with nothing right now. Cam Johnson is probably gone. D'Angelo Russell is probably gone. Nick Claxton might even be gone. Cam Thomas is a restricted free agent who I think they probably want to keep, but is really the only building block on this roster right now. Jalen Wilson is cool. Noah Clowney and Day'Ron Sharpe, we've seen some flashes here and there, but there's just not a whole lot going on in Brooklyn right now. And Jeremiah Fears, although there is some definite concerns as a 6'3" guard who can't really shoot the ball, I think the upside is there as a potential star guy because of the blow-by ability. We saw Russell Westbrook tear up the league for years, even though he couldn't shoot the ball. Jaden Ivey, not a fantastic shooter either, and Fears is also very young. I think a backcourt of Fears and Thomas, the size there is definitely a concern. But for a team that's not trying to win right now, I like the idea of going for star upside, and I think Fears has that. Maybe I'm irrationally confident that Fears is going to be a good player because a lot of people have him a lot lower than this. That's not a shock or anything. A lot of people do have him ranked in the teens. I do have him ranked right around this range in my big board as well. I think I had him 6th, above Maluach and Ace Bailey, which you might say is unfair, but super athletic, very good scorer, can get by people with ease, and for a team like Brooklyn, I think the fit makes a lot of sense. At number 9, I have the Raptors going with point guard Kasparas Jakucionas out of Illinois. Toronto is another team that's kind of hard to read right now. It's reported they're trying to move off of RJ Barrett. Jakob Poeltl, they seemingly want to keep. They have Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes as their forwards. But this team was one of the worst at pick and roll offense last season. They just need a little more playmaking as well as ball handling. And I think Jakucionas does fill that role for them pretty well. I think Maluach is another guy that they would really like if he was available here at number 9. But with him off the board, I think KJ makes some sense here. Because he fills their biggest weakness, which right now is playmaking. It's just not something they have a lot of. I don't think the Scotty at point guard experiment is something they should really continue. Is definitely a good playmaker, but I don't like him as the lead ball handler. So going forward, I just think it would be better to get a guy who's more suited for that role, and I think Jakucionas is that. At number 10, I have the Suns going with Thomas Sorber, center out of Georgetown. So this is a pick that they got in the Kevin Durant trade. It's kind of the centerpiece, honestly. Depends on if you value number 10 over Jalen Green. But Jalen Green does make a ton of money, which is kind of the biggest negative with him as a player, because there are definitely a lot of good offensive stretches with Jalen Green. March Mania, as they call him, because he usually does go off in that part of the season. But they definitely need a center. Nick Richards, Mason Plumlee, it's just not going to cut it. It's not good enough. So you are left with a few center options here. You could go Sorber, which is what I decided to do. You could go Derek Queen. He just doesn't really have the defensive upside that I think Phoenix would want. You could go Joan Beringer out of France, Colin Murray-Boyles. You do have options here if you're looking for a big, but Sorber is a guy who's generated a lot of noise as of late. Oklahoma City is rumored to be pretty interested. There are some teams in the early teens who I think would really like him on their team. But the Suns here at 10, they need a big, and they take what I would say is debatably the best one on the board, especially for what their needs are. 2.3 blocks per 36, is going to rebound the ball, and isn't going to take up a ton of offense. He does provide a little bit of offensive game. Whether it's from the free throw line or just catching lobs. He does have a little bit to his offensive game and is pretty good as a passer at nearly 3 assists per 36. Is good at passing out of doubles. But for Phoenix, for a team that already has Booker and Jalen Green, you probably don't want a guy like Derek Queen. I think Sorber makes a lot of sense, and their biggest weakness right now to me is that center spot. They need a center for the long term. Ever since they've traded DeAndre Ayton, the center's kind of been a revolving door. So this is a pick to me that I think is need, maybe over best player available. I think there are some better guys on the board, but despite that, I think this is a very sensible pick for Phoenix. At number 11, I have the Portland Trailblazers going with Carter Bryant, forward out of Arizona, a team that's apparently trying to take the jump this year. I mean, they traded for Drew Holiday, gave up Anfernee Simons and 2 second-round picks to do it. They do have some good players right now. Deni Avdija looked fantastic last year. Toumani Camara, who they already have, is a really good defensive wing. They have Matisse Thybulle. Shaedon Sharpe has the frame to be a really good defender. We'll see what that looks like. But the trio defensively right now of Holiday, Camara, and Donovan Clingan is really intriguing, and a guy who even says he models his game after Toumani Camara. Why not get another really good defensive wing who can hit shots for you? Is a prototypical 3-and-D type player. I think is a little raw. He didn't get a ton of burn at Arizona in the offense. He just didn't look super comfortable a lot of times, but the defense I think is going to be there right away and makes a lot of sense if you're trying to get better as an organization. At number 12, I have the Bulls going with center Derek Queen out of Maryland. I don't think Vucevic is there long term, and there are probably some Bulls fans that would groan at the idea of getting an offensive-based center once again after, finally potentially moving off of Vucevic. But Derek Queen is just so obviously, to me, the best player on the board right now. At least, well, we'll talk about another guy here in a second. But is the best guy based off of the skill on top of kind of the well-knownness of Derek Queen. I'm blanking on the word there. But is viewed very highly as a prospect. I would say most people have him top 10. And based off of that here at 12, I think it's good value. 20 points per 36, nearly 11 rebounds, 1.3 blocks. Domantas Sabonis, funny enough, is a guy that has been rumored potentially to Chicago. I don't think that'll happen. And because of that, I think this is, something that they need. The center position to me is the biggest hole in their lineup right now. They have the guards pretty much figured out in Josh Giddey and Kobe White. Matas Buzelis is a really exciting forward for them. I don't know if Kevin Huerter is going to be there long term. Patrick Williams has been a bit disappointing. So if you even want to play Derek Queen at the 4, I think you could do that, maybe next to a more defensive-minded center. The three-point shooting would be the biggest concern. I think it was 20% from 3 at Maryland, but does hit big shots. We saw that in the tournament. And I think this is a BPA pick for Chicago. At number 13, then, a guy who I have number 8 on my big board, I'm super high on. I have the Hawks going with Cedric Coward out of Washington State. Only played 6 games for Washington State last year, but in my big board video that came out Tuesday morning, I did have the kind of composite statistical analysis with the points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals, as well as efficiency. And Cedric Coward ranked second in the class, only behind Cooper Flagg, with those kind of raw and efficiency numbers. I believe almost 55% from the field and 40% from deep as a guard is kind of ridiculous. Nearly 8 rebounds as a guard is super high level as well. Can put the ball in the basket. I compared him in that last video to Darius Garland coming out, who only played 5 games at Vanderbilt in his freshman season. And not a ton, like a huge sample size from Cedric Coward, but is a guy who has risen up draft boards, and I think the stat profile backs it up as well as does the eye test. You watch him bully smaller guards in the post, is kind of a Jeremy Grant type guy as a lanky wing who can hit shots for you and be a good defender. I've seen people say they think Cedric Coward is a top 3 defensive player in this class. The Hawks just got Kristaps Porzingis. Otherwise, I probably would have went with a center here. I think their biggest thing now is kind of a backup guard. Their starting 5 is pretty well solidified. And Coward would be a fantastic piece off the bench with the ability to grow into a lot more than that. At number 14, I have the Spurs going forward, Rasheer Fleming out of St. Joe's. Another guy who is pretty solid defensively, has a really long wingspan as well, I believe over 7 feet, and shot 39% from 3, is kind of a modern power forward, and the idea of pairing him next to Wemby I really like. I think I have him 13th on my big board right now. Another guy that the stats really like, ranks out as a top 10 player in the class based off the analytics. And to me, I just really like Rasheer Fleming. I think there's a good chance he goes later than this, but I don't think he deserves to. I think he's a very talented guy, one of the more underrated players in this class. I think the offense off the dribble, when he's asked to create for himself, is something that can be a little concerning, but for a team that has offensive guys like De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama, and Dylan Harper, he's not going to be asked to do a lot of that. He can kind of spot up for you, and I think he would be really valuable in doing so, and kind of a long-term replacement for a guy like Harrison Barnes. At number 15, I have the Thunder going Noah Essengue out of France. The Thunder have a lot. I mean, they just came off winning the title and are probably the most complete team in the league right now. So at number 15, take a guy that a lot of people are mocking top 10 in Noah Essengue, whose numbers were pretty good overseas. Nearly 19 points per 36, 8 rebounds, and over 2 steals. As a long wing defender, kind of prototypes as a guy that the Thunder really like. The shooting isn't fantastic. I think it was like 28% from 3, something in that range. So that would be the biggest knock on him right now. But the Thunder just won the finals while shooting pretty poorly in the playoffs overall. It's not something that's a huge flaw for them because the defense is that good. So why not potentially add to it? And maybe if Lou Dort does get moved sometime in the future, it might not be this offseason. Maybe it's, next year to save on the cap a little bit. A guy who could potentially replace him in Noah Essengue. At number 16, I have the Grizzlies going with Meek Clifford out of Colorado State. This is the pick that they got in the Desmond Bane trade. And I think Clifford could be a guy who is a replacement there. At 23 years old, I think he's ready to contribute right now and just does basically every part of the game real well. 19 points per 36, nearly 10 rebounds as a 6'5 wing is phenomenal. Very Josh Hart-esque in that sense with the rebounding for a wing/guard. The hustle is off the charts, and I think Clifford is going to be a lot better sooner rather than later, and like Jalen Wells last year, could have a real impact for Memphis as a rookie. At number 17, I have the Timberwolves going Yegor Demin out of BYU. I think with Mike Conley here aging out pretty soon, as well as Rob Dillingham being more of a self-shot creator more than anything else. He does have a little playmaking to him, but they do need playmaking. I think that is a big weakness on this Timberwolves team right now, and 7 assists per 36 is one of the highest marks in this entire class. Doesn't shoot the ball super well, but with Anthony Edwards lighting it up how he did last year, maybe they're not as concerned about that. Julius Randle has shot the ball well in the past. Naz Reid can space the floor as a big, and Jade McDaniels seems to get better at shooting every season. So maybe they're not worried about the lack of three-point potential here with Demin, who is a guy I've heard rumors of even in the lottery. So was viewed as a top 5 guy early in the season, but as the shot never really came along, his stock did slip a little bit. But a 6'8 guard who can pass the heck out of the ball, I don't mind taking that shot here at 17. At number 18, I have the Wizards going Colin Murray-Boyles, forward/center out of South Carolina. And I think you could get really unique here with him and Alex Sarr playing kind of interchangeably at the 4 and the 5. And I do think they need some defense. A lot of the guys on the team right now, outside of Bilal and Alex Sarr, aren't fantastic defenders, and I think Murray-Boyles brings that right away, a defensive intensity, as well as kind of a bully ball throwback offensive style. Nearly 20 points per 36 doing so, and 10 rebounds is going to do a lot of the dirty work for you, which is something I don't think Washington really has right now. They did move off Jordan Poole, who is probably their best young guy. They do have a weird mixture of vets and young players, with now CJ McCollum, Chris Middleton, and Marcus Smart, alongside the guys like Carrington, Coulibaly, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George. But I think Colin Murray-Boyles has a maturity to his game that would kind of blend that into the best of both worlds. At number 19, I have the Nets going with center/guard Danny Wolf out of Michigan. Is a guy that is definitely going to need you to allow him to be himself in order to succeed. Is going to need some of the touches with the ball in his hands. And I think with Fears and then Cam Thomas, I think you have the freedom to give Wolf a little bit of his decision making on offense let him carry the ball a little more. And at 6'11", with his ball handling ability and the playmaking and the shooting has looked really good in workouts from what I've heard. I think this is a value pick here at 19, and it's a bet on upside for a team that has, again, 5 first-round picks. I don't think they'll take them all, but for the purpose of this mock, if they do, you're taking upside swings more than anything else. At number 20, I have the Miami Heat going with guard Walter Clayton Jr. out of Florida. It seems like this pick is almost a lock, and I don't think they'll have to move up to do it. He was interviewed recently of who he'd most want to have dinner with. I believe he said Eric Spoelstra twice, as well as there are just reports coming out that the Miami Heat really like him, and they want to take him here at 20. They do need a point guard. I mean, Terry Rozier is not going to be there much longer, and Davion Mitchell was a cool postseason story, but has a long history now of inefficient offense. Like, the defense is going to be there, but I think you want a little more playmaking and a little more shooting, and Walter Clayton provides both of those. Good score as well, 20 points per 36, nearly 5 assists, and shot almost 40% from deep this past season in the title run for Florida. I think he's a really solid player. I think a lot of people are going to put a little doubt on him because of his size, but the efficiency scares me a little less, because if you can do it efficiently at the size, I'm fine with it. And fitting alongside a team that has Bam and Kel'el Ware as your 4 and 5, they're not really an undersized roster, and I think that makes it more okay for how you might fit in. At number 21, I have the Utah Jazz going Joan Beringer, center out of France. One of the quickest risers over the past couple weeks as people have really dug into the film and the numbers. 2.7 blocks per 36. I think there's a real argument he's the best shot blocker in this draft class. They do already have Kyle Filipowski, but it seems like Walker Kessler is going to get moved. So why not get another big here? A couple young bigs, and I think the upside with Beringer is a little higher than Filipowski, which will probably entice a team that doesn't have a whole lot, like I was saying, with Utah. Is a player who a lot of people have mocked in the lottery right now. So even with that, the Utah might view this as a kind of value pick and a guy that can grow with the team and get better as time goes on at just 18 years old. At number 22, the Brooklyn Nets going with Asa Newell, forward/center out of Georgia. They got 2 ball handlers with their first 2 picks in Fears and Danny Wolf. So get now an aggressive, athletic, downhill rim attacker in Asa Newell, especially with Claxton likely going out the door. I think Newell makes a lot of sense in kind of filling the rim running that you would lose with that. Because to me, I don't think the team has their long-term center. Noah Clowney and Day'Ron Sharpe, like I said, are cool pieces, but I don't think they're starting 5s in this league, and at least Asa Newell gives you the upside of potentially reaching that. At 6'9" is a little undersized, but the verticality and athleticism do make up for that. Solid rebounder, solid scorer. The shot blocking could use a little work. I don't think he's, one of the best rim protectors in this class, like Beringer or Maluach, but is still a solid player, and the athleticism is why the Nets go him here at 22. At number 23, this pick was acquired mid-finals. The Pacers traded this pick to New Orleans to get their own pick back, which looks just genius by the Pacers after Halliburton's injury, because who knows how good they're going to be next season, and they're going to want to have their own pick, which they do now have. But the Pelicans here, I'm going with Jace Richardson out of Michigan State. DeJounte Murray is going to miss some time to start next season with that ACL tear. So getting another guard in here, I think, is something that the Pelicans will look to do, whether it's through the draft or through free agency. And a guy that shot, I believe, just over 40% from 3 and nearly 50% from the field. Is undersized at 6'1", but like I said with Walter Clayton Jr., the efficiency with that scares me off a little less. I've seen him comp to Reed Sheppard. That's who I have here. Is not quite the playmaker that Reed Sheppard was, who had really good assist numbers coming out of Kentucky, or kind of the deflector, whose steal numbers were also very good. But the scoring, the shooting, there are some similar aspects. Reed Sheppard is a guy that a lot of people still like in league circles, and I think Richardson could be really good value here at 23 just because people are doubting him for his size. A lot of big boards I've seen have him as a top 10 player. I wouldn't go quite that high because the size does concern me at least a little bit, but I do still think it's a value pick here at 23. At number 24, I have the Thunder going with Maxime Raynaud, center out of Stanford. I believe the composite stat ranking had him third in the class from the one that I did. The numbers are really good. Nearly 22 points per 36, over 11 rebounds, 1.5 blocks, and was pretty efficient as a center. Shot almost 35% from three, which is a big man. You don't have a problem with that. And with Hartenstein being there right now, they don't need a center next to Chet necessarily, but this is more of a bet for the long term, I think, if you're OKC, because Hartenstein is really expensive. You're going to have to cut that money at some point, and getting a guy who can long term play alongside Chet Holmgren makes a lot of sense. And even right now, it's not a bad idea to have a backup. Jay Will is really good at taking charges, but I don't think he's a fantastic backup center. So I like the idea of Raynaud, who I think is one of the more undervalued players in this class. I would have him top 20. I think he's even reaching up on the 15 range because the production was just off the charts this season at Stanford. At number 25, I have the Orlando Magic going with Bogoljub Markovic out of Serbia. Is a guy who shot nearly 39% from three this year. They did get Desmond Bane, but the biggest weakness on this Orlando team is still shooting. I think they would probably like to get another guard. I don't think Jalen Suggs as the only guard is something that they really like. Anthony Black has shown some flashes for sure. But I don't think they would mind getting another guard in here. But Nolan Traore, he's just not efficient enough. Ben Saraf, to me, isn't quite efficient enough either, especially if you're looking at a guard. So I like the upside here with Markovic and feel comfortable taking him at 25, which might be a little earlier than some mocks might say. At number 26, I have the Miami Heat. Sorry, not the Heat. This is the Nets pick. I have the Brooklyn Nets going with Nolan Traore out of France. 19 points per 36, 7.4 assists. Like I said, is a team that needs some playmaking. Nolan Traore, once viewed as hands down the best international prospect in this draft class. This is a pedigree pick, an upside pick. Like I said with Brooklyn, I think that should be their main goal if they're not going to trade multiple of these picks, which I think they will. But in theory, if they're sticking and picking, you have to take as many upside shots as you can. At 27, I have them going Will Riley, who's more of a connective piece to me than anything else. But I've had them take a couple guards, a couple bigs, so why not get a wing to kind of complete that? And I think Will Riley at this point is the best wing on the board. At number 28, I have the Celtics going with center Ryan Kalkbrenner out of Creighton, a teammate of a rookie last year on the Celtics in Baylor Shireman, and a kind of piece that they need. After moving off of Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, I believe, is about 40 years old, and the only other centers being like Luke Cornett and Neemias Queta. They do need some center depth for sure, and getting a guy who produced really well in his last season at Creighton, I like this pick here. I think they'd be really happy if Raynaud was still on the board. He's not. If Beringer was still on the board, he's not. So Kalkbrenner to me is the best center available, and because of that, Boston scoops him up here at number 28. Nearly 3 blocks per 36. It should be blocks, not steals. That's on me as well. But 9 rebounds and over 20 points. The production is very high. I didn't have him in my top 30 in the big board, but if I did, the stat ranking would have him a lot higher than 28 as well, because the production is just very high level here. At 7'2", gives you a lot of the height as well that you lost with Kristaps Porzingis, which is a big strength for them on their run to the title. He is a guy who could definitely have just been a really good college producer, was in college for a long time, but I think he can bring it to the pros. I don't think he's going to be a super high-level starter, but can he be a low-end starting center or even a really good backup? I think he can be that. And at pick number 28, if you're Boston, I think you're happy with that. At number 29, I have the Suns going with Ben Saraf out of Israel. Nearly 19 points per 36 and 6.6 assists is towards the top of the class as well. Just 19 years old and 6'5" as a point guard is pretty solid size as well. Tyus Jones might leave in free agency this summer. They just don't really have a lot of guard play. They've been trying to play Devin Booker at the point guard, which I just don't think is realistic long term to continue doing that. So getting a guy who could be that point guard at number 29, I like that for them. I think it's a position of need kind of desperately with a lot of shooting guards right now with Booker. Jalen Green, Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen. This team is just stacked with shooting guards. They need a playmaker, and Saraf can be that. And at number 30, with the last pick of the first round, I have the Clippers going forward Liam McNeely out of UConn. This is a little bit of a pedigree pick as well, because at points in the season was viewed as potentially a lottery pick, but shot, I believe, about 31% from three. And I said in my in my big board video, I like my shooters to be able to shoot. And it's something that Liam McNeely struggled with in his one season at UConn. Came in there believed to be a shooter, and that's kind of still his profile right now. But the shooting production in his 1 year at college was just not good, and that would scare me off if I'm a team in the teens. But at number 30, I don't feel too bad doing it because the Clippers as well are a pretty deep team. They have a lot of positions already filled out, and if he does turn out to be a Corey Kispert type guy, nearly 40% from three, then you've gotten good value at 30, and I think that's the Clippers thinking here. Hopefully we don't have any big trades before this video comes out that throw off completely all the picks here, but for right now, this is the mock. This is my final mock for 2025. Let me know your thoughts, the picks you agreed with, you disagreed with, your thoughts on the trades from the last couple days, and maybe some trades you're hoping to see in the draft. But I'm super excited. The draft is one of my favorite days of the year. It's like a holiday for me. I love it. But hopefully you guys do too, and hopefully you like the video. But that'll be it for me. Have a good one. Peace.